is Janice Cohen. I am a teacher at Marymount Adult Center. I have been mandated to teach English, language of instruction, and we have been working with pre-secondary level. The course I'm teaching is Taking Charge, and the scenario we have covered this session is You Are What You Eat. There were 3 learning situations that I was mandated to teach. The learning scenarios that have been addressed include exploring your fitness and eating habits, planning balanced meals, and grocery shopping with nutrition in mind. There were many activities involved within these 3 learning situations. The students were able to keep a food journal or a food log for a 3-day period. They were able to do a self-assessment as to where their eating habits were currently and where they should be. They calculated their body mass index, they calculated their ideal body weight, they did meal planning exercises, menu planning exercises, and they were able to interpret food labels. So it was a phenomenal and very practical activity for them. So the links, the resources, and all the references were contained within the teacher's guide, or the lab as we call it. The lab is the acronym for a learner activity book. So you'll see that term coming up quite often. So they were all contained within the lab, which was excellent because there was no fishing for resources at random. The learning situations, there were 3, and each, I would say, took approximately 10 hours because there was a lot of background information that was required for the students to learn in order to be able to do the activities. What was terrific about it is that each activity was short enough that it was able to be broken down between different classes, so over a period of time, which was great. That prevented saturation in terms of too much information at any one moment, given at any one moment. The learning situations allowed a lot of flexibility for the teachers, and we were able to develop our own strategies in that if group work seemed more appropriate, we were able to put the students in groups. They were able to work individually or with partners. The lessons were very easy to organize and to structure because each activity built upon the next. So there was no skipping around from one activity to the next. It just, there was no leaving out activities. We just moved systematically one to the other, and it worked extremely well. There's only 1 or 2 adjustments I might have made. I would have perhaps, in the text, in the reading text before the activities, put a little bit more of a hook into it because it was coming from a very academic perspective, and I think the students might have found that a little bit dry. The pre-secondary levels, the students are able to really manipulate concepts and ideas, and so it would have been great if there was more of more content that would have triggered discussion and involvement in class. Secondly, I found the students were a little bit saturated with regards to the chart format because the information that was provided was in chart format, and then the activities they were to complete was also in chart format. So at one point, it became less and less clear what was expected of the student just because visually they kept seeing the same repetition in terms of coloring and aesthetic quality. In terms of the initial self-assessment, it gave the students a context to realize the pertinence of this learning situation, dealing with healthy food and dealing with the issue of you are what you eat. So it allowed them to relate their level of stress or fatigue or illness with what they were maybe consuming or not consuming throughout the course of the day. So a lot of these students was able to relate it to their personal lives immediately off the bat with this self-assessment. Secondly, that one activity built upon the next, they were able to it was a very gradual approach, but they were gradually able to see the relevance in learning about healthy eating and how these concepts could actually help them and their families in a practical, tangible way. So that developed an appreciation for the material. Moving systematically through the program was great, and we were able to attain very tangible outcomes. So the students actually went home with their own personalized food guide, which indicated what their personal needs were. So it wasn't just a theoretical exercise, it had a very practical component to it, which was not only applicable, but immediately applicable, which was terrific. Some of the difficulties that we encountered was that the students had difficulty distinguishing between the different charts, and that was oversaturation. So it required a lot of investment in terms of time and energy explaining what was expected of them throughout the course of each activity. Secondly, some of the nutrition knowledge that was prior nutrition knowledge and what was expected of them was a little bit too in-depth. So when we got to the issue of macro and micronutrients, there was an evaluation that asked what their pre-knowledge was, what the students' pre-knowledge was. The students were completely overwhelmed. They worked as a group, and even as a group, they were unable to answer almost any of the questions, and the terminology was so obscured to them and foreign that it turned them off the subject immediately. Perhaps had we started with this subject, it might have been a different case, but because we'd already covered a lot of nutrition information prior to this, they were already, it was enough for them at this point. We had to sort of smooth over the subject a little bit and move on to a more practical component. So in terms of the students' reaction to the text, some felt that it was too difficult, but most felt that it was too simple, and that more content would have been appreciated. There was a lot of time and energy invested in the studying of nutrition, and it was, even though the English component was not supposed to be secondary, because some of it was very detailed, they sort of had the feeling that the English should come secondary to the nutrition component, although I did make a lot of effort to ensure that there was about equal footing. And they really appreciated being able to go home with immediate strategy and plan for healthier eating. And I have to tell you, they were all very impressed with how much they learned. This course into computer document production, and so they actually went online and produced their document of their personalized food guide on the computer. So the fact that they were able to do that showed that that was a reinvestment activity, and that tangible piece showed that all of these building blocks came together at the end. And the fact that they were able to assess what they learned at each stage, to recap what they learned at each stage, was very helpful, and they were surprised at the extent of what they learned. It is extremely helpful to know that there's a practical resource available that will allow the teacher to increase his or her confidence that they are actually teaching what is mandated and fulfilling their responsibility to the student. So the fact that all of the resources and material is self-contained in the teacher's guide and the learner's activity guide allows the teacher to know that they have walked away doing a complete job. And the fact that it is so structured allows them to have be able to do an objective evaluation of what they could improve on next time and tweak it a little bit, but knowing that they're staying in the context of what they are mandated to teach. There leaves absolutely no question that the handouts and activities are appropriate to the subject because they have been provided for us, and that gives the teacher also confidence that they're doing what is requested and their responsibility to do. It is also terrific to know that the students have a compilation of very practical activities and information that they actually go home with and they can refer back to at the end of their English course. If there were learning scenarios provided for other courses, I think the teachers would find it tremendously useful.